Okay, so I'm going to talk very quickly because I have a long presentation. I'm assuming you have copies of it. Vice Provost at University of Baltimore, a big TECO connection here. I was at Gallaudet for 30 years. You would have thought I would have got here on time because I know where I was, but I got lost. Peter, I don't know if you remember, you were at Gallaudet many, many years ago. My first year there, we were all trained at Alverno. I was at Wabash College when we were put on probation from Middle States for being out of compliance for mostly assessment things. Everybody took their foot off the gas. I retired, and then I was at a TECO meeting again, and then there was someone who, they said, we're looking for somebody at the University of Baltimore to do assessment. I'm like, oh, I can do that. And so there I went, and here I got myself knee deep in again in lots of assessment problems. Okay, so we just finished our Middle States accreditation, and Trudy, your book, I don't know if you remember, with Randy Swing. Randy was one of my, and I referenced your book when I interviewed for Baltimore, but we just finished accreditation 2 weeks ago. We were fully accredited, commendation on assessment, but I don't think I can do this another time because it was like, but I'm Jillian, you've been in both places, you know, it's like, holy crow. But anyway, but we're in a good place. Gallaudet's in a great place now. Why? Because people, you can't take your foot off the gas. That's the problem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the institutional framework for sustainability is. And I never thought as a faculty member I would talk about things like return on investment, but oh my God, that's what I'm saying. So I'm going to talk a little bit because I think it's important to go to the inquiry part. So when you talk to faculty about inquiry around assessment, and this is sort of the value of a model, and sort of you get to faculty when you talk about this. You know, you talk about what it is, the intellectual piece of assessment and student learning. And it's sort of, as you go through this model thing, and I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but you know there's a million models on student persistence, and I'm talking about persistence because isn't persistence, if you graduate, it means you've learned more and you've passed more courses and you've graduated. So that's really what it's about. You know, it's not about just counting numbers. So, you know, the typical input model, the student comes in, the university, the things that happen to them, and then we go out. But we need to look at operations from the student experience, not only at the course level, but every touch point that the student has at the institution. So my work at the University of Baltimore has most recently been what I call institutional assessment, so that you're looking at every piece that touches the student. What's happening in Office of Conduct, what's happening in the residence halls. So assessment is in so many places. So I think the narrow focus sometimes of the student learning outcome piece gets us a little bit in a narrow pathway as opposed to thinking more holistically. I just came back from Middle States last Friday. We had a training for those of us that do peer review, and they are not calling them student learning outcomes anymore. I thought, oh my God, I've just spent all this time talking about student learning outcomes. They're talking about them as goals. Well, I just finished with all these faculty members saying, I would write it in terms of a student learning outcome. And, oh, but it says a goal, it's the same thing. I said, well, you know, let's be consistent. So now I'm not going to tell them. So, so anyway, as students go through this path, you see that there's many ways they can get off the path, but we need to, at the institutional level, be thinking about the points off the path and why. And often when using assessment, you begin to think about what and how you can adjust that. So it's not a laundry list, you know, that, you know, what's your retention plan, your student retention plan? Oh, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. It's really not that, and excuse me for going so quickly. But it's this here is these, as you look, and this is where you kind of get into the heads of faculty, about what's happening in the classes in terms of the research base for that. Expectancy for success, attachment to friends, you know, as you go along sort of the research behind what you are doing, not only in what you're teaching, but how the pedagogy behind it. So, you know, there are many turning points when you think about it, this path, and then we've got these predictive points. So, you know, you're using your big data. You know, you're looking at predictive analytics about like students who come in with blah, blah, blah are most likely to succeed, so you predict who's going to fail. Your formative points, is it the whole student cohort coming in? So you start to look at high-level indicators, and then did we succeed in moving the path? So this is the things where I say, we need to appeal to the provosts and the presidents who are looking at the big numbers. The legislatures are looking at student success rates. They're looking at graduation rates. They're looking at first-time, full-time freshmen. To me, I think at some level, I hate to do it, but to get into this assessment movement, we need to be talking to the people that are looking at the bottom line. So the predictive turning points, you know, you can say if, you know, 90 to 95% of the first year students come in for second year, this will, so you start predicting, okay? And so you're getting this sense, because they'll say to me, I used to, was a chief enrollment officer at Gallaudet, so we do predictive analysis analysis around what's your graduation going to be out? What do you need to do that? So you predict, if we continue this way, this is what's going to happen. When you have the formative ones, you start looking at ways, early alert, for example, how is that going to change certain things that are going on? Sorry, I'm going so fast, I know. So I've got 2 minutes, oh my God. Okay, so start looking at these high-level indicators. So for example, I knew at Gallaudet that the total credits earned by freshmen in 2006 was down here. Look at that, out of a credits attempted earned, because we had a lot of developmental courses, failing a lot of courses. And in 2010, we had it up there. So I'm going to take you quickly through this. So as we go through here, from the standpoint of administrators, they care about the graduation rate. They really do. And so when we talk to people about what's important, faculty will say, well, I'm not worried about the graduation rate. I'm worried about my course, the high quality of it, whether or not academic rigor is involved. So we begin to pull it apart to be thinking about what's happening at each one of these points. Okay, so what this is where I was before, and I'm replicating it where I am now. We knew from here to here, so the fall to second semester, was students going to class, their ATC, and credits towards graduation. Remember I showed you that before? So what does that mean? When you look at credits towards graduation, you say, well, what courses are they failing? What's happening in those courses? And you begin to drill down to look at Jillian and I are involved in this project, high DFW rate courses. What's happening from here to here that is predicting the number of credits earned? That's when we started getting down into the student learning outcomes in the courses, what's happening, who's teaching it, how can we improve that? And then here, total credits taking, then we started to see what we were calling gateway courses here. Again, intro courses, high-level reading courses for some students, again, looking at and drilling down and figuring out what learning was happening. Was it different across sections? Were students online versus in person? So started looking again at the learning in those courses. And then here, this predicting into a major, where again, it was course passage. Okay. And we did a whole bunch of analytics around that. But that's where the assessment, I think, is important, because when you can, people can start looking at their contribution to the whole. So here, we've got, that's kind of the aspirational up here. This is what we were, and look at this graduation rate. No wonder they put us on probation. No wonder. And then, so we started doing this evidence gathering and looking at all the sorts of things, the gap analysis, attrition, intensity, and then we targeted some interventions, but the course redesign in the high DFW courses, that was really an important piece, and it was around faculty inquiry. I'm doing this now. You can't go in and say to faculty, you need to pass more students in that class. They'll say, well, we know how to do that, right? So just give them all A's. So it began around, what's happening in these courses? What do you think we should be doing? Let's look at that. It's from an inquiry standpoint, and you can really get faculty excited about that. And then the path works. I just want to show you from here to here, we went from a 28% graduation rate to 50. For the, well, we predicted actually the actual was 46. So what that means is that assessment is, can happen at so many different places, because in this here we were talking about things, student learning that was happening in the conduct halls. We were looking at not just at the course level, but across every piece of the institution. And so I think that that's an important piece to say, because at the end of the day, to sustain assessment, you have to have the right structure and the support. And if you can say to your president, you give me the support I need for assessment at multiple levels, I can almost double your graduation rate. And that's revenue, that's money, you look better in terms of the feds. So if I were to say, moving forward, what do we need to be thinking about? We need to be thinking about getting to our presidents and provosts and expecting in ways leadership matters. Your book, I mean, it's so important. So it's not only leadership at the top, but it's also the leadership of getting out what faculty are doing within their courses, and what student affairs is doing, and what the bursar is doing, so that collectively we are able to move the dial. I think that's the way that we might be able to make any sustained impact, because having come from two institutions where as soon as accreditation was over, the foot was off the gas pedal. And here we're like 2 years out from accreditation, people are scrambling to make sure that they meet accreditation standards. So I say it's about a culture shift, but the culture shift comes from the top, it comes from the resources, the commitment, the acknowledgement that that work matters, and kind of the pat on the back to the people when you start looking at your institutional data saying, wow, we really made a difference in that pass rate for that course. That seems to have led to more credits earned in the first year. Wow, that continues on to say that we've got more students graduating. So, am I okay on that? All right, thanks.
So I think it's great how you're using the predictive analytics with more like student demographics. So have you used predictive analytics using student learning results? Have you added that to your equation yet?
Not yet, because we're so early into it where I am.
Yeah.
So the level of student learning we're looking at is pass rates right now in
Okay.
courses. But that goes to, for example, developmental math courses or lower division math courses. We were able to increase the pass rate in those courses, but lo and behold, it wasn't making a difference in terms of students persisting. So there's something else going on.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. So that's why it's a constant inquiry, and I think getting faculty around the table around those questions, because it's not about bad teaching, it's about so many different pieces of it.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, really. I want to thank you for something. I think, and this was the reason that Kathy and I started the Teagle Scholar Program. I love the way you fronted the idea that, on the one hand, you're working with people and doing course revision. On the other hand, you're thinking, how can I get this work advanced?
Yeah.
In terms of the way my president and administrator are thinking. And there's a real political aspect
Oh,
to
yes.
this. It's really powerful and important. That is not just learning the assessment stuff.
Right.
It's actually learning how to work within your institution that is so critical to having this stuff have impact. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I think that almost tied a little bit into what Jody asked earlier too, of how do we
Yeah.
get this message out, and in a way, and how Peter responded, well, think about what your legislators want
Yeah.
to know.
Yep.
Think about what your administration wants. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.